covering all 4 major sports in the District of Champions. It's the DC Crossover Podcast with your hosts, Mike Cerrone and Ben Simpson.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the DC Crossover, episode 132. That is Mike Cerrone. I am Ben Simpson. It is good to be back. Mike has been holding down the fort, I think, the last 3 episodes.
Yep.
So you got to be sick of him by now. So I am back in the swing of things here. Looking forward to catching up. We got so much to talk about on this episode. We are in. There's so many things going on sports-wise right now, obviously, with the various seasons and things like that. And then also you got World Cup, which is fresh on the mind as U.S. Drew today in their game against Wales. So a lot to talk about. But I do want to remind you can follow the show on Twitter at the DC Crossover and at Cerrone16, especially if you'd like to get into some Twitter beefs with Michael. Definitely give him a follow at Cerrone16. I know Mike's been talking about some of his beefs over the past few weeks and things, and it is pretty outrageous when you think about it. Just how many stupid people there are on Twitter. Because anybody can get a Twitter, obviously. It's a very simple process. It is amazing. You sometimes forget how many stupid people there are in the world, Mike. And then you go on Twitter, and then you read some tweets and replies and things like that, and you go, okay, now I know, like, hey, I may be dumb sometimes, but there are people out there that are 10 times dumber than me. 100% when you read some of the replies, especially in the sports world.
Right, and that's the thing is, and I specifically said it last week. I actually had a TikTok on there. Follow us on TikTok at DC Crossover Podcast. And the funny thing was, I had a video that was in my drafts that I didn't get to post because at that point it just became too late and it was kind of irrelevant. But the funny thing about it is that people just they're very ill-informed. And they're the type of people, and one of my friends is a very big proponent of this. They're very ill-informed to the point where they read someone or they see like Stephen A. Smith or someone on TV.
A headline reader. That's what they are.
Yeah, or a hot take creator, and they're like, "Oh man, this guy." And so my friend, like for instance, he says like he sends me like a Stephen A. Smith thing about the Commanders, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, doesn't he get paid so much money? I was like, that doesn't mean anything. Like, it means absolutely zero. Okay, ESPN pays Stephen A. Smith because he's a personality, and he's a basketball guy. I don't even know, like, it's not like he's sitting there and he's, I don't even know, Trenton Dilfer, who's been covering, the football for 15 years. Right. It's just crazy to me. So I just think that people that are very ill-informed on Twitter just can't help themselves. I mean, especially when they start sitting there and just yelling at you. I mean, caps and GIFs and all these different things. And it's called GIFs, not GIFs.
Yeah, right.
But it just makes me laugh because honestly, like I said, I told you guys about this last week, and obviously you were out, so you were kind of hearing this in a third party scenario, but that was the first time I fell for it, going for it, in literally probably 2 years. I stayed away, and then all of a sudden I couldn't help myself.
It was I when you told me like, hey man, I'm getting into a beef, or I saw it the next day or whatever. I was going back and I was looking at it back and forth, and like, look, like we all have. Having a bad sports take is, when you love sports, like it happens. You and I have both probably had bad takes over the years, every now and then, and maybe you're wrong, and then you're proven wrong later on, or things like that, or sometimes you're proven right, and so like. I would never fault somebody, not necessarily. It depends on the take, but for the most part, I'm not going to necessarily fault somebody too bad for having a bad take. It's more of like how much defense they put up about that take. With no other real knowledge or facts or things like that, or when they start they're trying to pick you apart because you think something different from them. Like it's kind of wild, and I know we'll get into the Heinicke stuff a little bit later in the show. But it is wild to see right now in DC sports fandom the divide of, we call them the Heinicke haters, and then the Heinicke lovers, because there is a divide right now, and Mike and I, you may understand where we fall on which side we fall on, because we've talked about it before, but man, it gets a little hostile on the tweet machine for sure about this subject.
I mean, honestly, I think that it comes down to Taylor Heineke. It comes down to the people that are infatuated with him,
right?
And then the people like us who are more realistic personalities.
Yeah, we obviously don't hate
podcasts
Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
You know, like we're kidding when we say Heineke haters. Like, we don't hate the guy. We're happy that the team is winning. We're happy that, that obviously it's just exactly what you're saying, where the level of greatness they're placing Taylor Heineke in, the realm, the saying he's as good as Mahomes or some of these other guys. It's like no, he's not at that level. And the success that he's having, and again, we'll get into this more, but the success that he's having, they're having the success despite Taylor Heineke, basically. Like, he's doing just enough to not screw it up.
Well, now you're seeing a lot of different blue check mark people out there that are more well informed and more well in tune with stats and the team and the NFL and in general, tweeting out things that are saying like, well, if we're going to compare, like, and that's the thing too, is people were grilling me on Twitter, like, because their comeback would be against Wentz. And I'm like, I haven't even said Wentz once. Like, I'm not even talking about Carson Wentz. Like, and I even said it last week in the episode, or maybe 2 weeks ago. I forgot. They're all blending together now. That it's funny to me how he gets so much crap and so much shrapnel thrown his way. The guy's on the sideline. He's not even playing. He's not even on a press conference. And everyone's like grilling, oh, Wentz sucks. And I'm like, Wentz is not even playing. Yeah. Like, you're literally just saying that to back Taylor Heineke.
And when he was playing, not even a good getting the ass kicked out of him because the offensive line was letting guys just run through and breaking the guy's fingers and his hands and everything. I mean, like, poor guy. Yeah.
But on Twitter, though, the problem is on Twitter is that even when you disprove someone, they keep saying that same stat just to make themselves believe it. Because that's the thing is, I literally, it's like one person said, what's his record? And at the time I said 10-9 as the Commanders starter.
Right.
And he was like, no, this year, you have to talk about this year. I'm like, why do I have to talk about this year? It's like, I mean, for instance, is Trevor Lawrence not going to have this year and last year's like blemishes on his career record? I mean, if Trevor Lawrence becomes a bust, okay, which I personally don't think he's going to be at this time. I mean, they're still rebuilding in Jacksonville. But do you think Trevor Lawrence, I keep saying Taylor now, Trevor Lawrence is going to be a bust or not be a bust because, he had 2 bad seasons, or it just makes no sense. Like,
the wins and losses don't make sense when we're judging a quarterback because Justin Herbert doesn't necessarily have all the wins, and we know he's a good quarterback. I mean, some of these other guys in the league too, it's like, hey, maybe the wins aren't really there, but we know, hey, it's not because of the quarterback's performance. Like, you can look at some Lions losses this year and be like, yeah, Jared Goff was a big part of that, as far as some of those losses. But still, you can't give Taylor Heineke all those wins per se and be like, we won because of him. Like, because the guy's throwing under 200 yards. He's getting maybe 1 touchdown pass. He's throwing almost picks left and right. It's like the team is winning because of some of these other guys on the team. It's not necessarily because of Taylor Heineke. You could put URI out there, and they'd probably scrape together a couple of those wins.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, though, is that you look at when people, and especially on Twitter, and again, this is like more of like just a venting about Twitter situation because especially this week, by the way, this week, I was trying to scroll through a little bit. Didn't see a lot of the Heineke hive out, like, going nuts because he didn't really do anything. And I saw this one guy today. He said, believe it or not, Taylor Heineke is a proven starter in this league. Here are some highlights of his season so far. And they showed a pass from yesterday's game that like he was backpedaling and he just like tossed it to Logan Thomas, and Logan Thomas made a nice catch and like ran. And I was like, what was so special about that?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, how is that a highlight? Like, I want to see a highlight. The problem is they don't have highlights of him, throwing nukes from 70 yards away because the guy can't throw more than 50 yards max because we've already proven that. I mean, when we were in the Vikings game, literally max, he threw it 49 yards to Curtis Samuel because he crow hopped. And we all know, especially playing baseball and stuff like that, when you crow hop, that's when you're trying to throw the hell out of the ball from the warning track like Bo Jackson. Like, you got nothing left. You got nothing left. It's like it just makes me laugh, man, because they literally revert back to the same stat. And when you say, well, he's this as a starter, they're like, well, we don't care about stats. We care about just overall the leader. It's like
Yeah.
I hate when people say the intangibles. Like, okay, everyone has intangibles because they're the NFL. Let's be honest here.
Also, leadership. We're not in the locker room. We don't know what these guys actually think of Taylor Heineke and if they actually think he's a leader. If they say it to the media, of course they're going to say it to the media. They're not going to go dog a guy on their own team. So we don't really know, if that Taylor Heineke's presence there in the locker room is also a difference maker versus Carson Wentz being in the locker room. It's like we don't know these things, so we can't claim these things.
Right.
So that's another thing that pisses me off. For look, I get it. The story is cool. It's a guy who really you never thought would have this sort of shot, and he is. In the games that he happens to be playing in, the team happens to be getting some wins. It's a nice story. I think it's a lot more correlation than it is causation. You learn that in Statistics 101. So I think I would love to see the winning continue. I would love, nothing more. And I told you this over text, and then we'll move on. We talked about this. This has been weeks building up, but we've been talking about this. And I said, if Taylor Heineke leads this team in the playoffs, they get a win or something like that in the playoffs, then I'll start to be like, all right, maybe this kid's legit. Maybe he's the guy for the future. Until that point, what exactly is this doing for us?
Right.
Like wins are wins. I'm happy to get a win. Guess what? The win yesterday was against a one-win Texans team. Are we really going to necessarily
had 5 yards in the first half?
Yeah. Are we really going to celebrate that as much as people are going to say the win against Philly? Sure, that's a big one. That's a great one to have on your resume for sure. But still, let's look at all of this as a whole, all these games as a whole. Let's look at the actual individual performances and then make a smart evaluation, not just root for the story. So we'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But let's hit up the rewind machine, because I did want to. Let's see if the rewind machine would work. Clearly, the iPad that I play the rewind music on has not been really in use for the last 3 weeks.
Got some dust on that thing.
Yeah, I had to charge it up, and now it's frozen. So whatever. I won't play the music, but I'll get into the rewind regardless, and hopefully we can get it to work at some point. We'll start with the Washington Capitals. The Caps 7-10-3 now. Not a good week for the Caps, to say the least. Losing to Florida 5-2. That kind of finished out this Florida trip as they were outscored 10-3 in this recent trip to the state of Florida. You did have, there's the music. You did have Strome and Carlson both score for the Caps, and they lose 5-2 to Florida. Following up that game, losing to the Blues 5-4 in a shootout. Caps were down 3-0 in this one. I think they gave up all 3 goals in the first period. So it was kind of a nice comeback, but still losing. You do get the point, obviously. You're happy about that, but losing in the shootout, not great. You had Carlson with a couple goals, Ovi with a goal and a couple assists, and Connor Sheary also scored. Caps lose their 8th in their 10 games. And then, oh boy, losing to Colorado 4-0, getting shut out. Kemper allows 4 goals on 29 shots. This was kind of the Kemper-Colorado revenge game, if you will, and it did not go well. 9 losses in the last 11 games, 4th loss in a row. Terrible week for your Washington Capitals. On the other side of things, on the court, you have the Washington Wizards, and I'll let you get into this, Mike. The Wiz Kids, pretty solid week, 2-1 week for the Wiz Kids.
No doubt about it. After starting 3-0 or 3-1 or whatever it is, and they had the little losing streak, they have turned it on as of late. Lost to OKC,
6 of 7 or something like that.
I think it is something like that. It's somewhere in that ballpark. At the beginning of the week, they lost to OKC 121-120. SGA scores 42 points, including the 3 with 1.1 seconds left. Which we're not even going to get into whatever the hell that inbounds play was,
right?
Because that was just embarrassing. Didn't even get a touch on the ball, to be honest with you. And I think it was Lugens Dort who like hit in the back, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, it was the dumbest thing ever. KP still with 27 points. Beal finished with 25 in his first game back after missing 5 games. Kyle Kuzma with 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists. Of course, I didn't bet on him that game, which was, of course, that was great for me. Then they beat Miami. They came back 107-106 in overtime. Beal with 27 points, KP with 20 and 17. That's huge for him. Kuzma hit a 3-4 so overtime, which he's been off and on with his 3 games.
Yeah.
I mean, last night he was really great, but then the night before he was like 2 of 10. So it's pretty crazy the nights he has. So it's pretty much an off and on roller coaster for Kuzma from beyond the arc. Miami had just 7 healthy players, no Butler, Hero, or Bam. So it's good that we got the win because you definitely needed the win against that team with those 3 stars out of the game. And they followed it up, beating the Charlotte Hornets 106-102. Kyle Kuzma once again with 28, 10, and 5. Great night for him. Beal scores 26. So Beal's averaging around 25 or so since he came back. Took a knee to the thigh late, so that might be like a bone bruise or something of that nature. But the Wiz have won 6 of 7. The Wiz scored only 18 points in the third quarter, which, of course, if you went with the over, that didn't hit.
No, it did not. But yeah, the Wiz kids have been playing well, especially lately. You mentioned Kyle Kuzma right now on the season shooting about 32% from beyond the arc, which is somewhere in the middle as far as his career numbers. He averages as a career, he shoots about 34%, so he's close to that mark, but he is shooting more threes per game than he ever has. He's shooting close to 7 threes a game and knocking down two and a half, right around two of them. And so Kyle Kuzma, definitely the volume of 3-pointers has gone up a lot this season, but he's still shooting decently. I mean, anything over 30% from beyond the arc, you're going to be happy with, and he's doing that. So I think the Wizards will definitely take that because Kuzma's been big. I mean, Kuzma was one of those guys that I feel like still flies under the radar in the NBA right now. Like I don't hear that many guys talking about Kyle Kuzma and what he's doing for the Wizards this season. As far as his numbers go on the year, averaging 19 points a game, averaging 8 rebounds. So he's pretty close to a double-double average, getting about half a block a game, 3.4 assists. I mean, Kyle Kuzma is playing some really good basketball. He's averaging his highest points average in his career. I feel like Kuz doesn't really get the love as much. All eyes tend to be on Beal when we're talking about the Wiz from the outside view, and then obviously Porzingis has been playing great too. But I feel like Kyle Kuzma kind of flies under the radar.
Well, he also was very durable. That's a big thing. And with this team, when you're looking at the 3 stars they have, if you're including Kuzma in that, which I would,
definitely.
KP, knock on wood. Maybe I have a lot of fake stuff around here. The biggest thing is when you're looking at KP, in his past, he's been not durable whatsoever because of the sole fact that he is a tall dude. And he's running the floor left and right, and he's playing inside, playing outside. He's a very versatile big man, but the problem is when you have a versatile big man, you get hurt a lot. Yeah. And then Bradley Beal has been showing over the last 2 seasons that he's not that durable right now, and not staying on the floor as much. Obviously, he missed a handful of games recently. So you're looking at Kyle Kuzma, and I just see him being that NBA prototypical body type that really doesn't get banged up that much, because you see, like I said, what I said about Porzingis and then what I said about Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal is kind of lanky too, but you'll see looking at Kyle Kuzma, he's like 6'7", maybe 215. I don't know. We'll have to look that up to be exact. But at the same time, he's the type of guy that's going out there and being very durable for this team, because when you see certain games that Bradley Beal's not there, he goes out there and he hits close to a triple-double and lifts up and elevates his game. And then you'll also see when KP does the exact same thing when Bradley Beal's out, they lift up their game. But I think Kyle Kuzma, as you mentioned, is one of those pieces that, like you said, isn't really getting a lot of love because he's overshadowed by guys on his team. And that's the problem, is he was overshadowed by LeBron in LA for so long. But now he's supposedly outshadowed by Bradley Beal, but you saw in those handful of games that Brad was out, he was on fire. I mean, I can't tell you how many times you look at the box score and see him have 26, 9, and 6 or something like that, and you're like, hell yeah, that's what we want to see. And that's what he has had and brought to the NBA ever since he came in, because like I said, he was overshadowed by LeBron in LA, and LeBron didn't really want him there, and they kind of gave up on him, and we basically got him for like peanuts, which is like kind of weird to say, because that's one of the best moves Tommy Shepard could have ever done, is bring this guy in here. He's like 24, 25 years old or something like that, doing work. So I think that he's the type of guy that we need to build on for the future and have as a really big piece in this organization. And obviously we went into last week of possibly trading Bradley Beal and all that kind of stuff from all the stats that I read last week's episode. But overall, I think Kyle Kuzma definitely needs all the credit he deserves.
Yeah, let's stick with some Wizards talk here.
Washington Wizards.
Because we're getting into it, and I think, I think it's an interesting topic because in my mind, and when you look at one of the interesting things that I like to look at is the 5-man combinations on Basketball Reference, where you see when certain certain groups are on the floor, what's the points plus minus basically when they're on the floor. Like for example, when the lineup of Will Barton, Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, and DeLon Wright are on the floor, the team is minus 40 in points. So that's clearly a combination of 5 guys you don't necessarily want on the floor at the same time. The most common combination, though, is Denny, Bradley, Kyle Kuzma, Monta Morris, and Porzingis. And
which has been the starting lineup recently.
Right, and that's played the most minutes together as a group, and they're plus 19.5 in the point side of things. So I versus the opponent's points. So it's basically they're outscoring their opponents by almost 20 points. That is a great stat to look at because I think it shows that you really need all 3 of those guys in Porzingis, Kuzma, and Beal on the floor. You ideally at the same time to really for them really to shine, because if you only have one guy, like for example, you mentioned Kyle Kuzma playing really well when Beal was out. The lineup with Corey Kispert in there when Beal was out, the plus 21 points over opponents, and that was with KP and Kuzma. So I think it's one of these things where having just Kuzma in there or just Porzingis in there, when you look at the stats, it's not great. But if you have at least 2 of those guys on the floor, which obviously this makes sense, these are their best players. But my point is, Kyle Kuzma has fit really, really nicely because he's had a supporting piece with him. If Kristaps Porzingis wasn't here and Bradley Beal was hurt, we're not getting the same production from Kuz, because Kuzma, when KP's on the floor, it's so perfect because Kuzma, while he has shot a bunch of threes this year, he also works really nicely driving to the hoop, and Porzingis is more of a guy who he'll kind of float on the outside and hit long threes and stuff like that. So I think they complement each other so nicely, something we haven't really seen for the Wizards in a while, where you have multiple pieces since the days of John Wall and Bradley Beal backcourt complementing each other so nicely because Beal was the shooter, Wall was the driver. Right now, this group, especially when Denny's playing well and Rui's playing well off the bench. You got Corey Kispert, who, since he's come back, he's played really well. I mean, this is kind of an exciting time because when you look on the NBA, as far as the standings and things like that, Mike, the East is kind of, and I know it's early, but the East is kind of up for grabs. I mean, besides Boston and Milwaukee, they're going to be your 1-2 basically for the most part. The Wizards are right there in the mix with Atlanta, with Cleveland, with Indiana, Toronto. Philly's been bad. I feel like, and I don't want to call it right now, Mike, but I feel like the Wizards are a top 5 team in the East.
Right. And when you're looking at the standings, obviously, like you said, you got your blue bloods when it comes to, as of recent years, with Milwaukee and Boston. Atlanta's going to be there, obviously, with Trae Young and company. And Cleveland's been shooting up the rankings lately with all their moves and draft picks and so on and so forth. But you're looking at some of the teams that people, know are probably not going to be there later on the season. Indiana. Right. Probably not going to be there. I mean, they traded their guys. Yeah, they traded their arguably their best player in Sabonis last year, and they obviously were not projected. I mean, I think they're worst or second or third worst in the East in opponents' points per game, letting about 115. But then you're looking at Toronto. I always think they're kind of a fraud because when Kawhi was on the team, they were good, whatever. Philly, who the hell knows what's going to happen in that team. Brooklyn, they might not even make the playoffs because of their disaster that they got going on. New York, I thought New York was going to be a lot better this year, but they could just have a slow start. Who knows? But then you got some other teams that are lower. Obviously, Miami with all their injuries. Chicago has a lot of good pieces. So you're looking at it and saying the East has the 2 top dogs. but they have other teams that can be thrown in the mix there. Where if we keep this pace and if we keep, I guess you could say, winning as a team rather than winning as, oh, my one star goes for 50, because look at Steph Curry. He's probably scored what, over 45 like 3 times in the last 5 games, and they've lost like 4 of the 5. It's nuts, because you're looking at this team and you look at like the roster, like you just mentioned, there's a lot of different pieces on this Wizards team that can be thrown in the mix and just gel. And that's the thing, is that's what you want to see, because we haven't seen these types of teams in the past, because I've said it and clamored for it for years. I wanted them to get a big man. I wanted them to get a center or a big, huge power forward type from the draft, or get him in free agency. And not saying that KP is that big guy that I want. Like, I wanted like a Daniel Gafford in a KP body. That's what I really want.
Right.
But you're looking at it and saying, this is kind of a team that we haven't seen in the past, because they actually gel as a team and they all have their own roles. They don't sit there and say, all right, Brad, go ISO and we'll all hang out on the sidelines. They're all moving, they're all gelling, they're all mixing. Rui, this is a perfect spot for him. We drafted him a little bit later in the draft, and same with Kispert. They both, coming out of the same school too, Gonzaga, they literally are from an organization, or should I say not an organization, from a program in Gonzaga that is team-based. Yeah. This is exactly what they want. Right now, they got drafted like kind of mid-round, and all of a sudden they come in, in different spurts. Sometimes they start, sometimes they don't. Not for Rui. Rui is off the bench, 6-man type guy. But you're looking at him, he's having the best year of his career so far. Because he comes in and he gives you those 7, 8, 9 points or whatever in like the third quarter when everyone needs a breather. And then all of a sudden you're seeing everyone come back in refreshed for a fourth quarter run. And that's what I'm loving about this team, is that everyone is filling in their role. Brad isn't going out there trying to score 28, 29 points a game like Gilbert Arenas did back in the day because he had to. You're looking at this team and making sure that everyone eats. And we talked about it with Bradley Beal being out. Yes, okay, Bradley Beal being out, everyone was eating more. But now you're looking at it and saying Bradley Beal still, he's going out there, and you look at some of the betting numbers. For him to score over 20 points, it's not like it's an easy bucket. They're especially predicting, like on DraftKings, our sponsor, and everything like that for him to get over 20 points, it's like a minus 110. It's not like it's a minus 350 for like a Sabonis double-double or something like that.
Right.
So what I'm just saying is, I just think that it's kind of funny, because this team is gelling so much to the point where it's fun to watch them and it's fun to see how they're playing. Now, if they get in a skid, how are they going to get out of that? Is Brad going to sit there and say, oh, well, I have to take over the team, which is going to, make sure everybody else kind of, is in the background, or they're just going to try to regroup together and say, all right, lost a couple in a row, lost 3 in a row, whatever. We know what the problem is. Let's get in there and fix it. And that's why I think Wes Unseld Jr. is a great hire for them, because he is defense focused. And I think that's why everyone's starting to buy in, because you're looking at the defensive numbers over the last 2-3 years, since he's been here, they've gone down drastically.
Yeah, I think it just seems like all these pieces really complement each other. And that's something that we've been kind of waiting for, the right group of guys together, and I think we finally have that. And defensive ratings wise, the Wizards currently rank 6th in the league in defensive rating, and that's obviously, some of these stats aren't the be all end all, but at the same time, like that's pretty dang good. You'd love to see that. And then meanwhile, on the offensive side of things, the Wizards are. Oof, how far down are we talking here in points per game? I didn't realize they were this bad. 29th in the league in average points. So, they're getting it done defensively is what it shows you. It's like their guys, there's 3 studs are doing what they need to do, and then their defense is kind of handling the rest. And that's why you see a team here now with a really nice start. So obviously it's early. I think we'll know more as the weeks go on, but I think you gotta love a 7-3 in the last 10 games, 10 wins now, right there in the mix in the East, and a lot to love there. I know. Well, one of the things you did while I was out was that TikTok poll. But again, that reminds you to check out our TikTok. DC Crossover Podcast on TikTok, because we had talked a little bit about off air about possibility of trading Bradley Beal at one point.
Yep. And I obviously put that poll out at DC Crossover Podcast, and it's kind of an overwhelming favorite. Now, I would love for you to guess, because you don't know what it is. I'd love for you to guess what the overwhelming favorite is. In either yes, we trade Bradley Beal and find a way, or we don't.
That's
now, granted, think about this. This is granted, though. This is about midweek last week when this poll was sent out.
Yeah, because when the discussion was happening, it was when the Wizards were winning a lot without Bradley Beal.
Yeah,
because he was out hurt and the team was continuing to win. I think though. I think the logic will go the other way, and I think the people will be more in favor of keeping Bradley Beal. So I'm going to say the advantage is on the don't trade Bradley.
It's actually on the other side.
Really?
So there was over. I mean, I should say I should have done the percentage. There was over 70% that said yes, trade Bradley Beal, and a very, very minute amount of people that said no, because that's
interesting.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and you and I've talked about it, and we still, I'm still not ruling it out. Now, obviously, when you dive into the nitty gritty, it's like, well, he has a no trade clause he can use. He also can't even be traded till December. He also, there's a lot of different factors in that.
Right.
But it is something that we've discussed in the past, because we've wondered, hey, could you possibly that the value you're getting for Bradley Beal, could you possibly trade him, get some picks or other younger assets, and still just bring in another shooter somewhere else, and still, as long as, and just ride with KP and Kuz? That's kind of been the question we've been asking.
Right. And that's the biggest thing, is when I was looking at it, I was kind of so shocked that there was a lot of people that were saying, yeah, get rid of him. And I think, honestly, in the video, I did read like 4 or 5 stats that are pretty intriguing in the sense of, when Bradley Beal was on the field or on the court, they are over 9 points more letting in on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, now, I'm not saying Bradley Beal's a horrible defender, but at the same time, he's not great. But then you're also looking at the sole fact that the record, they're like 500 without him and less than 500 with him, which is crazy to see. And just going back and touching really quick base on the defensive stats that you were talking about, their defensive and offensive differential. Now, I didn't know that their offense was this. I wouldn't say putrid or anything like that, but obviously, when you also didn't have Brad for, he's your main top scorer, that's also a big deal. Sure. But you're looking at it and saying the differential between points per game and opponents' points per game is less than a point. And you're looking at the Clippers. The Clippers have the second least opponents' points per game, and they're still in the negative. I mean, but they're at less than 1. So I just think that when you're keeping the game low, that's what the ebbs and flows of the game is going to be. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be close. And that's what this team is built on right now. Yeah. This team is not built to go out there. I mean, yeah, Kuzma is a great piece, but he's out there scoring 19 and 7 or something like that. And then KP, he's having a great year. But, when he was having those unbelievable games recently, Bradley Beal wasn't there. So you didn't have that extra scoring piece. And a lot of these guys they brought in, like a Monte Morris, Will Barton, these guys are also defensive pieces. And we also talked about Corey Kispert and Rui not being high flyers for offense, but a lot of good defense when it comes to them. Same with Denny. So you're looking at them. I think that this team has kind of turned the page on being this, we need to score 120 and the over-under is going to be 267, type of team. And I think right now they're kind of getting back into what Wes Unseld Jr. wants. And we just need to figure out that scoring edge per se. Right. To make sure that we go, because now obviously in the NBA, as you know and I know, that typically to be one of those elite teams, you got to score 115 or higher every single game.
Yeah, usually the teams that traditionally make it, NBA champions and things like that, you're usually a top 10 team in defense and a top 10 team in offense. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Those Warriors teams, obviously the Bucks are one of the best defensive teams in the league. Miami, when they were making runs at the finals recently. I mean, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league. So yeah, you need to be, and so the Wizards clearly have had the defensive part. The offense is where they've been slacking a bit, and they need to turn that on. Because yeah, for example, I bring up Miami. Miami had 7 healthy players dressed out for that game. The Wizards should not have to go to overtime to beat Miami when they don't have Tyler Hero or Bam Adebayo or Jimmy Butler. I mean, all their best players were out that game. We were literally playing against guys that are probably G League at best, some of the guys that were on the court in that game, and the Wizards had to go to overtime against them. And then the Hornets are not a good team either. This was like a 3-4 win team also. The Wizards barely scraped out a win. So, yeah, you'd like some of these wins to be a little bit bigger margins because I think of all the games this week, yeah, you had a 1-point game to OKC, 1-point game to Miami, 4-point game to the Hornets. Yeah, you'd like to see a little more blowouts in the mix too, but we'll see.
And the last thing I'll say about that is, again, you're looking at the stats that have compiled over the first 17 games, and you're looking at the points per game. Bradley Beal, 22.7. KP, 20.4. Kyle Kuzma, 19.1. And then Rui is a huge drop-off.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about that is when you see KP or Bradley Beal or something like that, and they both go out there and they say they combine for 50 points.
Yeah, those 3 are getting the 50, 60 points, something like that combined. Where are you getting the other 40,
Exactly. And that's the biggest thing is even sometimes, you see Kyle Kuzma go out there. I mean, 2 nights ago, Kristaps Porzingis went out there and was like 4 of 17 at one point.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at some of these nights, they're not going to be scoring those points every single night, and you're not going to have that consistent basis. The problem is that when you see teams that have these superstars on, like a Kevin Durant, you can bank on, like a Steph Curry, you can bank on that guy going out there and making 40 points a game, sometimes maybe just, on average 30 to 40 if they need to. The problem is this team is more based of a team like I said before, a whole role base. Okay, let's go get the rebounds, let's slow it up, and let's figure it out and stuff like that. Because they're backups that are coming in off the bench. I mean, Daniel Gafford, I love that guy, but he's only scoring 5 points a game. He might grab 17 rebounds when he's out there.
Yeah, that's
but
his role.
He's only scoring. Yeah. Exactly. That's his role. So you're not going to see a bunch of scoring out there. And that's why these games are a little bit lower scoring when it comes to the offensive output. But the defensive output is what I like to see, because I like seeing these tight games where they go out there and they actually have a really good knit grit win. Like the OKC, it was higher scoring. SGA went off for OKC, but you saw not really anybody else for Josh Giddey didn't do too much.
Oh, yeah. No, OKC's once you get past Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, there's nobody on that team.
Yeah, so it's like that's not exciting to us, It's like when Russ was here, it wasn't that exciting because we were doing well, this and that, blah blah blah, but it was more of Russ gonna get out a triple double and get a record or whatever, but then everyone else sucks, and then we're gonna lose 7 in a row. So it's just one of those team based things where you got to love the game of basketball to enjoy this type of basketball.
I agree, and I think a big question is, if the Wizards continue to be in the mix and they're in that top 5-6 teams in the East, what will Tommy Shepard do at the deadline? What sort of rental, or other sort of piece do you bring in here to help the team? Jay Crowder, or there's a few different guys that are on expiring contracts that, hey, maybe you bring them in and make a run in the playoffs. We'll see. Let's move over to football. I know we already talked a little bit about the Commanders, but we got to touch on it a little bit more on the game itself. We don't have to dive into the details because this was kind of a stupid game. I mean, 23-10, you're playing the worst team in the league, the Texans. You did have a couple nice moments. Obviously, you love Kendall Fuller getting a pick 6. That's big. Yeah. Defense in general was solid. I mean, John Allen, a couple sacks, Sweat, a couple sacks. You got to love that. And, of course, the news of Chase Young should be suiting up for next game against Atlanta. That's good news. I mean, we feel like it's been forever since we I mean, Chase Young had last played here. It's like I barely even remember the guy. You had Logan Thomas reel in 5 catches. That was kind of nice. Scary Terry 4. I mean, offensively, this wasn't a tremendous game. Yeah, you put across 23 points, but I mean, you had the pick 6 there in the mix too. So it's not like this team was really explosive. I feel like the nitpicky in me is saying you're playing against Houston. where's the offense? I mean, maybe why did this team not put up 40 or something like that? But they did enough to get a win, I guess, and I guess we're happy with that, Mike, because Taylor Heineke was out there.
Oh yeah, that's the reason they won. I mean, that's the funny thing is I still remember that Dan in our group message said apparently Twitter is saying that Taylor Heineke got the pick six.
Right.
And that's that's just the thing about this whole entire win is I've been saying it now for a few years. I want to have that blowout win. I want to have the Eagles versus Redskins on Monday Night Football where Mike Vick goes out there and Deshaun Jackson is showing up LaRon Landry and all that kind of stuff, and they run up the score on you. I want to have one of those type of wins. And this is the day, yesterday was the day to do it. And we still couldn't do that. I mean, we literally scored one time. Now, don't get me wrong, we had some long drives. Okay. We had, the first field goal was 10 plays. The second field goal was 11 plays. The third field goal was 10 plays. Even though we had 10 plays and 20 yards, that's nuts. But you're looking at it and saying, where are the drives that we can actually just put away? I mean, because right there, say you get 2 touchdowns right there, you're up 28-0 at halftime. And you're blowing them out, and then you can just cruise to victory, maybe get one more touchdown or something like that, and then win 35-10 or something like that. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see 20-yard field goals. And I was kind of shocked by Ron Rivera not saying, all right, let's just put the pedal to the metal and go for this 4th and goal from the 4 or something. It's like
against Houston.
Yeah, against a team that barely beat or barely tied the Colts and sucked the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Davis, I mean, they had 5 yards. I mean, think about that. Literally, we had 5 minutes left in the second quarter. The Texans at that point, they might have had negative yards. I don't even know how many they had at that point. And we're sitting there saying, oh, let's take the points. Like, take the points. What are you talking about? If you're so confident in your quarterback and you're so confident that we can win this game, go out there and, I mean, we're already up 14-0. You think the Texans didn't even score 14 points the entire game,
right?
And you're, I mean, they're averaging right now 16 points, and we scored. I mean, it just makes no sense because the defense was kicking their ass up and down the field. Davis Mills looked like a newborn baby out there trying to figure out what he was doing with a football in his hands, and you're looking at Joey Sly going out there and kicking 24-yard field. I'm like, I don't get it. Go for it. Do something creative. I mean, this is where our team starts to become more just blah than anything, because when you see other teams like a team that has Cliff Kingsbury or one of these younger coaches, they come up with something fun and creative to, some of the stuffs are duds. Some of the plays are duds that these newer coaches, Sean McVay's run. But like, I mean, look at run a Statue of Liberty there. Do something fun. Like, do something crazy. I mean, you're literally already up 14-0. You're kicking their ass on defense. I mean, even if you're up 17-0, 7 seconds left, you're on the 7-yard line. Do something. Like, it just makes no sense how, yes, it sucks that we stalled when we got in the red zone a couple of times, but you're looking at it and saying, do something more. Like, this is basically a practice game because the Texans are so damn bad. I mean, excuse me.
Oh no.
They're almost died there. The Commanders, I mean, literally the Texans have Brandon Cooks, Brandon Cooks is a good receiver, but I don't even know who else is out there for them. No. I mean, literally, they drafted, and granted, I'll eat some crow on this. They drafted Kenyon Green, I believe his name is, the left guard at Texas A&M, and he was like one of the best offensive linemen in the draft, and he sucked. Yeah. He was so bad.
Yeah.
And John Allen was running over him like a Mack truck going against a Volkswagen Beetle. Right, I mean, it was embarrassing. So I'm just looking at it and saying that's one of the nitpicky things I wanted to see is have some balls, go for it out there, do something. Because when you're sitting there and your defense is running them up and down the field and just embarrassing them on their home turf, where half the fans are sitting there like, why did I pay $27 for this ticket in the nosebleeds and watching this team suck? You're out there saying, oh, let's take the points, guys. Like, that's just the old man mentality, and I hate that. I want a new age coach in there. Obviously, we make the playoffs. He's going to still be here somehow. It just makes no sense. Scott Turner's going to get another pass for sucking ass all the time. It irritates me, man, because now, like I said last week, this has gotten to the point where literally we have to root for him because draft stock is gone. Draft stock is in the pasture. But now we have to root for him. So yesterday was one of my real in-depth, like, oh man, I hope we win. Hope we go out there and have a good showing and stuff like that. Because in the weeks past, when this team was showing nothing, we were 4 games behind and all this kind of stuff, I sat there and said, man, honestly, I don't want to root for a loss, but I really want CJ Stroud, or I really want one of these quarterbacks out there.
It's
so
all
I was
kind of
so the draft picks are out now. So I mean, we have to really go out there and see what we got. And honestly, the Heinicke hive is alive and buzzing for his 193 yards.
Yeah, they're loving it. And I guess speaking of playoffs, I mean, let's just kind of look at the remaining schedule here and give our thoughts on it, because the team as of right now 6-5, and you got these 6 games remaining. So you've got Atlanta next week. You're in New York on the 4th. Then there's the bye, and then you play the Giants again at home on the 18th, and then Christmas Eve game in San Fran. Then you're at home on New Year's Day against Cleveland, and then you're home against Dallas on the 8th to end the season. So, Atlanta, winnable game. The Giants, I mean, you look what the Lions just did to the Giants the other day. You stop Saquon, you stop the Giants, basically. That's how it works this season. And with the way that this defense has been playing, and with Chase Young being back, there's a pretty good shot that you could possibly take both of those Giants games in theory. Let's just say at the very least they take one of them. They take the game at home. Then you go, so then you're 8-6, and then you got San Fran. That's going to be tough. Probably a loss. 8-7. Cleveland, that's probably a win. 9-7. Then you got Dallas 9. I mean, this team could be 9-8 to end the year and sneak into a wild card spot. I mean, we could be seeing Taylor Heinicke losing the playoffs again in the first round.
I mean, seriously, that's the thing that I think is hilarious, is because, and I said it in the last 2 episodes, is that everyone is still hung up on that Tampa Bay playoff game for Taylor Heinicke, and that's why I think they love him so much. Now, people are still saying like, oh, Heinicke is a proven starter. And even if we make the playoffs, say somehow we squeak a win.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same type of game as today, where the defense just shows up. They drub the offense of the opposing team, and they look like they have nowhere to go for the most part. And we somehow win a 23-17 game where the defense wins the game for us. I mean, what are we going to do by then? Because even what I saw today was that Ron Rivera said it's still week to week. It's not like his job for the long term, which is hilarious to me, because I don't know if he believes in Taylor Heinicke or he's trying to create drama or what's going on, because honestly, they look at it and it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, just give him the job for the rest of the season if that's what you want to do. Because
right.
If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. Okay, that's a moment of weakness right there. He got hurt. You got to move to another quarterback. But you can't sit there and just like say, we're gonna commit to this guy fully, and then all of a sudden a week later, because he didn't do great yesterday, because his stat sheet was as empty as a blank sheet of paper, basically. You go out there and say, oh, well, it's still week to week. Like, are you going to commit to him or not? Like, right. I mean, when ESPN throws out something that says, oh, yeah, Taylor Heinicke wins the starting job, like, what are we doing here? Like, Taylor Heinicke wins a starting job, and everyone's all of a sudden, all the Twitter is blowing up because of his Jordan shoe thing. It's like, I mean, it's just, oh my God, it's all over the place. And I think that's going to be hilarious if we get to the playoffs again, because like you said, going through it, Falcons, probably maybe a dub. We'll see. I mean, Giants, maybe you split. Niners, they're all over the place. You never know what you're going to get from them.
Right, you're right. That's not a guaranteed loss. I mean, I know I said probably a loss, but at the same time, I mean, the Niners are right there. I mean, the Niners currently have the final playoff spot, and they're 5-4, when Washington's right behind them at 6-5. So yeah, no, there's some. I mean, God, we do
it's
this
all
to
over the place,
every
man.
year. It is. It is.
It's just one of those situations where I'm just so confused all the time, where it's just like I hate being in flux. Like, I want to have a great defense and have a competent quarterback that's going to go out there, like a Jared Goff. If we had Jared Goff, it would be a different team, I think. I think Jared Goff is better than, and you know him more than I do because you've been on the Lions already. But it's like, I just want someone that's going to go out there, and I'm not going to try to get into Heinicke stuff already because I'm already I'm kind of exhausted. I'm choking over here, just talking about it. But it's like, I just want someone out there that can lead this team, because I even said it before that, you got guys that are under contract, John Allen, Terry McLaurin. I mean, these guys are under contract, and we're just wasting their contract years, still in quarterback flux, because you have half the people out there want a guy that's going to go out there and throw for 206 yards and average 1 touchdown a game or whatever, because they like him as a leader and he has quote unquote intangibles. Which, I mean, I'm sorry, you go on a NBA or a NFL draft, they're not going to sit there and say, well, this guy doesn't have the stats, but he has the intangibles. They're not going to do that. I'm sorry. Yeah. But it's just like, if you can name one other quarterback that's out there in the NFL right now that has the intangibles and it has stats that are awful, then let me know, because we can plug and play him too and not have to pay him at all. Because everyone thinks, oh, we'll give him a contract. We'll give him a contract for like $5 million. That'll change his life. It's like, okay, what the way you're talking about him is that you think that he should be making $25 million. It's like, right. It just makes no sense. I'm done.
It's exhausting. I still think it's insane, the fact that the NFC East all 4 teams could make the playoffs this year.
That'd be nuts. That would be insane.
Crazy. I mean, right now, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants are in the first 6 spots, and then you have the Niners in the 7th spot. But the Commanders are right behind them in 8. They're right there on the bubble. That would be crazy. Of course, I'm hoping my Detroit Lions pull out a playoff spot, which we'll see. They're on the bubble.
That'd be pretty good.
10 right now. But yeah, it is. I'm with you. I think it's the exhausting part is you look at this team and what they've been able to do with the guy that's at the helm of the quarterback. And just imagine if they had a stud quarterback for this team. I mean, you got to think they could be, in the mix as one of the 4 best teams in the NFC, something like that. Like, this could be a really, really good team if they had I said Mahomes earlier, but just one of those guys who's like
a Joe Burrow.
Yeah, exactly. A Burrow. Any of those guys that's just synonymous with, hey, this is a stud quarterback. He's our guy, rather than the big question mark. Because right now it's even a question mark week to week, is because Ron Rivera says, well, Taylor's going to be our quarterback for next game, but it is still a week to week thing. I'm not sure yet, and it's like there's so many questions and flip flopping, and it's just exhausting.
It's one of those situations where this defense, like, think about this defense with Joe Burrow at the helm. Like, Joe Burrow could sustain drives, and that's the biggest thing that everyone likes, is that, oh, Taylor Heinicke, he moves the football well. Okay, maybe once in a while he'll roll out of the pocket and get a rollout pass or something like that, or a scramble or whatever it may be, and it extends drives. I get that. I like that. But that is also coming into a play because his deficiencies, he can't see over top the line. Yeah. I mean, some of the plays this past week, I was like, what are you doing? I mean, the Texans dropped like 2 or 3 picks. I mean, it's like you just look at that and say, if those picks against the Packers, against the Texans, and so on and so forth, the Vikings would have had a pick if that ref didn't plow into the DB. But you're looking at it and saying, if those picks come to fruition, I mean, we're getting lucky right now, because if those are picks, then all of a sudden we score.
He's the luckiest quarterback in the league by far. You cannot watch his games and not realize, I mean, how many dropped interceptions there's been, the ref play that you talk about running into the guy. I mean, like, he is the luckiest quarterback in the league by far.
I mean, I don't know how much luck you can have. I mean, luck of the Irish over here, but it's like
our worry is like that luck's going to run out at some point, and then all the Heinicke lovers are going to realize, oh, this guy's actually not that good.
Yeah. Well,
he's going to have like a 4-pick game or something like that.
Oh yeah, he's gonna have 4 picks, 1 touchdown in garbage time, and they're gonna say like, "Well, we still love the resiliency. We still love." It's like, all right, man. It's like how I mean, it's exhausting. Yeah.
Let's move into the final lap before we get into some money line picks and such. 90 seconds on the clock. Big stories in sports. Here we go. I want to start in college football, Mike, as Tennessee, kind of a surprising loss there, and Hendon Hooker out for the rest of the year. I mean, just a few weeks ago, Tennessee was, hey, this is the bright shining star, and now that star is completely burned out.
I mean, that star is out into a different atmosphere. Yeah. I mean, it was just unbelievable how Tennessee, I looked up at a TV and I saw on the bottom line, because the other game was on, oh, Tennessee is down like 50 to 30. I was like, well, wait a second.
What happened?
I mean, didn't Spencer Rattler suck? Isn't that why he got ran out of town in Norman, Oklahoma?
Mike's favorite Taiwanese basketball player made his debut. Dwight Howard, 38 points, 25 rebounds, 9 assists in Taiwan Basketball League. Mike, what type of stats do you think you'd be able to put up in the Taiwanese basketball league?
Oh, dude, I'd be averaging double-double. I mean, let's be honest.
Okay, I
here.
like a little 11 and 10.
I would love to see. I mean, I would honestly love. I mean, honestly, I'm not trying to trash the Taiwanese here.
No.
But like, I mean, what's their average height over there? I mean, I understand that people, go to different countries to play when their career is ending, or they're trying to revitalize a career, or if they can't even make it in the NBA. But let's be honest here. Dwight Howard has been at this point in his career. He's a bench player. I mean, he's like Wilt Chamberlain over there in the 60s or 70s or whatever the hell Wilt Chamberlain was.
He's one of the greatest they've ever seen. 38, 25, and 9. He couldn't get that 10th assist. He just couldn't get it. He could have easily had
9 assists for Dwight Howard.
yeah. It's something. I was looking at Chinese Basketball League because I was curious today because I was curious about like what guys are over there that I recognize their names and such.
Oh yeah.
We had of course Michael Beasley's been over there a while now. He was for Shanghai Sharks. You had there was a couple other names where I was like, oh man, I remember that guy. Oh yeah, one of the guys from the Warriors. Not James Wiseman. It was I'm already Kevin. It was like Kevin something. I don't know. It was some guy who was like on the Warriors like last season is playing over in China. It was wild. And then the last thing, of course, the World Cup, Mike, kicked off, so to speak.
Yeah.
And USA, of course, as we talked about at the top of the show, drew their game against Wales, a game that you probably would have liked getting the full win there. They probably should have won. Really bad foul led to the penalty kick. Gareth Bale punches it in. But one of the things I wanted to bring up here before we move into the money line is one of my biggest pet peeves, and this happens every time around the World Cup, is you'll have the influx of sports fans that never watch a minute of soccer until it's World Cup time. And look, I get it. The USA is playing. You're rooting as a country. Like you're rooting for USA because they're USA, not because you like USA soccer specifically. I understand that. I'm okay with that for the most part. The annoying part is the people that never watch soccer who come in now to watch soccer, and all they do is complain. Oh, this is why soccer will never make it in America. Guys are just flopping all over the place. That guy's laying down on the ground for 5 minutes. Oh, the guy barely got touched and he falls to the ground. Like you'll see it over and over again on Twitter and other places on social media. All the complaints of like, this is why soccer won't make it in America because of that. Because we don't. And it's like, it's extremely annoying because, well, one, look at any of the sports that are American, there's flopping left and right. I mean, just watch a game of the NBA, of the NBA, you see guys screaming for call. I mean, watch LeBron play basketball and then talk to me about flopping because the guy will hunt for every single call. He'll berate the refs all game long. He'll throw his head back. He's the biggest, toughest guy on the floor, and he flops all over the place. So don't tell me that there's not flopping in American sports. And two, like, yeah, of course, soccer is never going to be as big as football and as baseball and basketball and things like that because those sports were invented here. Like, they happened here. Like, soccer is huge everywhere else because those are the countries where soccer was invented. Like that is why it is the world sport, and then we have our little sports here in America where we like to play baseball, and the other countries are like, go play a real sport. The people here that think like, oh, like soccer is such for wussies and things like that, get a little bit bigger view in the fact that soccer is the most popular game in the entire world. It is bigger than, football's king here, but nothing beats soccer when we're talking about international sports and the eyeballs and the money and things like that. So, like, respect the game a little bit. I understand you don't have to love it, but at the same time, it's like soccer is big worldwide compared to some of our stuff here. So that is my annoying big pet peeve of watching the World Cup and going on social media is all the people commenting, oh, there goes another flop and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I did text you earlier when that one guy like literally was on the ground.
Well, right.
But I wasn't complaining about. The guy was exhausted, but I was like, all right, just drag him off the field at this point.
Well, no, the annoying thing that you pointed out was like, yeah, guys flop and get calls and things like that. That's like part of the strategy of soccer. What you were pointing out is the same guy multiple times the ref kept stopping the game, even though usually the refs will stop the game if they think it's like, hey, this might be a head injury or something like that. Like, that's when we're going to stop. Otherwise, we're going to let things play on for a bit and then we'll stop it if the ball goes out of bounds, whatever. This same guy, the ref continued to just stop the game, even though the guy was just like flopping on the ground, barely got touched. Like, that's an annoyance, but that's not something that happens constantly.
Yeah.
Like, that's where it's just people that complain about that.
That's the thing
annoying.
too, is that I even told one of my kids today, I was like, hey, anybody watching the World Cup? And literally might have been one hand, and the kid was from Germany. So it's like, it was crazy because like no one was hyped about it. And I was hyped about it because first of all, you get a bet on it, but also because of the sole fact that I love watching these big tournaments. My favorite tournament is the Champions League because I'm a Real Madrid fan.
Right.
So when I get to watch that, that's awesome. I love watching Real Madrid. But then you're looking at the World Cup. This comes once. It's like the Olympics. I mean, literally, you need to understand.
And USA has not been in this for 8 years. So they missed the last one. So it's like you should be, if you're at all a sports fan, you should be excited for this. Like, you don't have to love soccer, but like you should be excited in my mind. I don't understand. And maybe they just do a bad job marketing this. I don't know what, but like you're right. I don't think kids are as excited about this as like we are. I think a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, like I think the people that got to see, maybe it's just the fact that we got to see those incredible moments, like the Landon Donovan stuff, and like those incredible moments in the past with like the Team USA, and then that has not really. Team USA's been like nothing for a while, and now they're young and they're fun and they're qualified again, and maybe they're just not household names yet, I guess.
Yeah, and
like there's no real star besides Pulisic. Like that's the only guy that some people even know. Everybody else on the team in the past, it was Clint Dempsey and Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, and like you knew these guys, and there's not really a ton of household names right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish Alexi Lawless went out there and just bust some caps because that guy would be the biggest guy on the field. But overall, funny story. One of my best friend's sister-in-law had a chance to date Christian Pulisic.
Really?
And is it Pulisic or Pulisic? I don't know what it is.
Whatever.
And she had a chance to date him like back when they were like 18, 19 years old, something like that. And she just said, all right, I'm just going to be friends with you instead. And she's doing well enough for herself right now. But at the same time, the one that got away. You got this U.S. soccer star.
He's the face of U.S. soccer right now. They call him Captain America. Like,
well, the one thing that does piss me off about the USA soccer is that like, how do we not have certain guys out there that like? I mean, I understand like genetics and all this kind of stuff, but there's a ton of people playing soccer still in the United States that you don't have to watch it, but these people are playing soccer in the United States. Why don't we have like a tall guy out there that can head the ball or something? Like, see, find me something.
Yeah,
like,
we've got all these small, quick guys out there.
It just looked like the Welsh were out there, and it was like
they got some big boys.
The Giants versus it was like the Little Giants movie. You got freaking I don't know, the freaking the Scarface or whatever that guy's name was, a Little Giant, and going against the little pipsqueak.
Team USA is little, they're small, they're fast, but they're definitely getting. I mean, there's a reason why there were so many yellow cards in this game. I mean, Team USA was just getting pushed around all game long. But yeah, it's going to be, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but like, yeah, it's going to be a tough road, an interesting road here for USA trying to get out of group stage, because now, you've got a big game against England where you've got to somehow maybe try to scrape out a tie. I don't think they're going to win, but if they could at least get a draw.
I believe it's going to be goal differential, I think, is the tiebreaker. And then if it goes by a tie by that, then it goes by head to head. And I think after that, it might go by like away goals or
too. It starts with
I'm saying, because you think about it, Wales is probably going to lose to England. England might just shut. I mean, they already killed Iran today. But everyone's probably going to beat Iran, and then you got that's why this game was so important.
Right.
But you're looking at it and saying, okay, what's going to happen? I think goal difference is going to play a huge factor in this whole entire time.
I'm worried. I mean, Friday. That's why Friday. It's like you'd like to try to keep it low and draw, I guess. I mean, maybe not necessarily low. Maybe you'd want like USA to get at least 2 goals. I don't know what's going to happen. Everyone's going to beat up on Iran, but it's going to come down to like this game today could end up being really costly, not getting the win instead of just a draw. So we'll see. By the way, fans, let's we move into the money line. The wait is over. DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is officially live in Maryland for those Maryland folks here. Now you can legally bet on all your favorite sports with DraftKings anytime and anywhere right here in Maryland. For a limited time, new customers who sign up with promo code DC Crossover will receive $200 in free bets instantly. Obviously, with World Cup going on, I mean, you've got a while here because you got knockout stages and things like that. Now is the time where if you want to utilize those bets, now's the time to do it. DraftKings has the best features, including same-game parlays, unlimited player props, and more with fast and easy payouts right at your fingertips. DraftKings Sportsbook is where Mike and I both go for all our sports betting needs. Here's what you do. Download this DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code DC Crossover to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on any sport. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code DC Crossover. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 years or older, physically present in Maryland. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus issued in free bets. See DraftKings.com/MD for full terms and conditions. Thank you again to DraftKings and our money line, as Mike has had a wonderful run here of late with his DraftKings picks for our his money line picks. I was about to say his real life bets, maybe not so much, but 15-7. You've been great. I'm 8-14. I'm still below 500. I got to turn it around here. We'll go through our locks and our dogs. I'll start. I'm gonna keep betting on college football until it's over. Even though I've been terrible, but I'm gonna go with Texas -8.5 versus Baylor. I like Texas winning by a couple touchdowns or maybe a touchdown and a field goal, something like that. I think Texas gets the dub here, and I hope they cover that. My dog. This is gonna be a fun one. Michigan and Ohio State. I think weird things happen with these rivalry games. I think Michigan may be able to keep it somewhat close. I ultimately think Ohio State will win this one, but I think Michigan, who's a 7.5 dog, I think maybe Michigan loses by a field goal, something along those lines. I'm gonna say they keep it close. So Michigan plus 7.5 against Ohio State on Saturday. The battle, the undefeateds. That's gonna be my dog.
Yeah, Michigan and Ohio State kind of struggled this past week. Obviously, Maryland and Ohio State. In Michigan's game, it was down to the wire. I mean, obviously, they barely won that game, which was crazy as well. But looking at my lock, I was looking at college football, just like you said, because I really wanted to, stick the college football season out, but I didn't really like anything too much. I think one bonus play, this is not my official, but one of my bonus plays is going to be UNC -2.5 against NC State. NC State's just reeling, and Drake May, I think, can lead that Tar Heels team. -2.5 against the Wolfpack. But my real lock is the Dolphins -12 versus the Texans. The Texans suck. They are so bad. It is embarrassing that they're even a team right now. And that's why they should have a relegation system, just like the EPL does over there in London. But apparently soccer is not popular, so no one really cares, apparently.
Right,
Quote unquote.
Sucks, apparently.
But then you look at the dogs here. I'm going with the Rams plus 14.5.
That's a big line.
It opened up at, I believe, 5.5 or 4.5, and something drastically had to change. It might have been maybe because of the Cooper Kupp news. But I mean, if you're giving me 2 touchdowns and the defending Super Bowl champs, with Stafford at the helm, I mean, the Chiefs, they might run it up, but they're not a world beater this year without Tyreek Hill.
Bad teams cover that sort of margin. I mean, that's crazy. 14.5. You guys listening at home, you got to be nuts to not take Rams plus 14.5 at Chiefs. I mean, I'll probably, even though that wasn't my pick, I'll probably bet that too, because it's if in the NFL, like you said, if anybody's giving you over 2 touchdowns as a spread, you got to go with the dog, because this is the NFL. I mean, bad teams at least cover those types of spreads in this league, because it's the NFL. I keep saying,
unless you're the Texans,
unless you're the Texans for sure. But wow, I like that a lot. That is our money line picks of the week. It is good to be back again.
Welcome back, partner.
Us. Yes, we had so much. I mean, there were even stuff we didn't even get to today. We still have, but we're not going to do a 2-hour show this time. So we will. We'll be back next week, where we'll be able to talk about the Falcons Commanders game. I'll of course be, I'm sure, talking about my terrible Thanksgiving loss with the Lions and Bills game. But hey, you never know. And then one thing I wanted to tease everybody to remember, that we did this last year. We did the airing of grievances, the Festivus show. We're going to do another one this year here in December. So be prepared. Start getting in your grievances now if you'd like via Twitter at the DC Crossover and at Cerrone16, because that's where we do a show where Mike and I just kind of go down our lists and talk about things that piss us off. And that's going to be the Festivus airing of grievances. I'm excited for that show. That'll be coming up in December. Besides that, again, the TikTok DC Crossover podcast on there, and support our sponsor DraftKings. Use promo code DC Crossover. Get what is it, 200 and free bets? I mean, that's awesome.
Yep.
If you're a gambling man like Mike and I, you need that money. So you need those free
I would love it.
that is for sure. Anything else, Mike, before we wrap it up here?
Not too much. Obviously, like you said, you've been out for a few weeks, so I do still have a funny experience, which, as you know, and I teased it before, that the grill that's in the backyard, it's going to be a funny experience, because there was a lot to unbox in that experience out there in Chantilly. So that'll be coming next week.
Yeah, we definitely got to get into that one. And because Backyard Grill Chantilly, not a sponsor, definitely. They
might not be there that much longer.
It is a rough scene over there. All of you at home, we wish you the best Thanksgiving. Enjoy it. Eat a lot for us fat boys out there. And we will see you next week. It's been another episode of the DC Crossover. Take us out, John Z.
Happy Turkey Day, everybody.